how Palestine, which is depicted in green, had territory in 1917. And as we move through history, that green becomes smaller and smaller.
This diagram is completely bogus. I'll bring you up to speed. Make sure to follow me here for more. Let's go back to 110 AD. Hadrian...
No, let's not go back to 110 AD. Do you want to know why? Because biblical rights have absolutely no status in the world today. No one in the world can say, 2,000 years ago, here's my story of what happened, therefore I have the right to take this land from these people. That is absolutely ludicrous. If you want to make that claim, okay, fine, but then also admit that you are somehow distinct from the rest of the world and international law does not apply to you. I love how this person's whole strategy is to invoke biblical times to delegitimize a map depicting the historical record from 1917 to 1995. That is not relevant. Do you want to know what is relevant? Every relevant international institution, including the UN Security Council, the International Court of Justice, aka the World Court, the Red Cross, which administers the Geneva Conventions, even Israel's top legal authorities all agree that the Jewish settlements in the West Bank are in violation of international law. Let's look at them again a little bit closer. In 1917, Palestine belonged to Palestinians. In 1948, 750,000 Palestinians were expelled by Zionist military forces, who captured 78% of historic Palestine. Thus, the State of Israel is created. In 1967, Israel started a preemptive war with three countries, Jordan, Syria, and Egypt. The Six-Day War resulted in Israel's occupation of the West Bank, East Jerusalem, Gaza, and the Syrian Golan, and expelled a further 300,000 Palestinians from their homes. The UN Security Council has declared that Israel must leave the territory occupied in 1967, and that settlements in occupied territory constitute a flagrant violation under international law and a major obstacle to the achievement of the two-state solution. The EU has emphasized that the only way to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is through an agreement on a two-state solution that ends the occupation which began in 1967. As UN Secretary General has stated, the occupation has fueled recurring cycles of violence and retribution. It is also true that in 1995, the Oslo Accords further broke up the West Bank into three cantons, Area A, Area B, and Area C. These maps depicting the shift in power of Palestine being controlled by Palestinians to Israelis is accurate to the historical record from 1917 to 1995. Furthermore, the establishment of the Jewish supremacist ethno-state of Greater Israel is in direct opposition to international consensus. The international community remains clear in its stance on the occupation and the need for a two-state solution. What do I mean by that? The Arab states, Palestine, the PLO, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, the citizens of the United States, all overwhelmingly around the world agree that a peaceful two-state solution is the answer. And every time this very important issue comes up at the UN, there are two states, but really just one state, that vetoes it. And those two states are the United States and its lapdog, Israel, who must do what Master says. Let's toss aside the implications wrought by a world in which you have one rogue state that is in the minority, and yet it has total veto power over the entire world. In other words, the entire international community is against what is happening in Palestine right now, and has been for decades. And yet it still carries on, because the United States is that powerful. The United States has year after year after year vetoed the resolutions posed by the UN which call for the self-determination of Palestinians. In 1971, Egypt's Anwar Sadat made a peace offer to Israel, which was in full accordance with the UN Resolution 242, which called for a return to pre-1967 borders in the region with security guarantees. The US flatly rejected it. Again, in January of 1976, Syria, Jordan, and Egypt proposed a two-state peace settlement at the UN Security Council in accordance with UN 242. The PLO supported the proposal, and again, the US rejects it.
The Ottoman Empire had control of this region, but it was a non-defined region with no self-governance or borders subject to the laws and rules of the larger empire that controlled it.
Please don't hurt yourself with that reach of trying to justify the ethnic cleansing conducted by the genocidal apartheid regime of Greater Israel by citing the laws and rules of the Ottoman Empire.
There was no national identity because there was never a Palestinian state. It was just a region, like the Rocky Mountain region in America.
This is an absolutely absurd claim to make, and it betrays good old settler colonialism logic, as if the Rocky Mountain region wasn't occupied by indigenous people before white colonial settlers came along and took over. His own example disproves his point.